Good morning. We are very close to being ready to start. There's still some few seats in the front, if anybody wants to take the opportunity. Today we are going to hear about Mendeley, the reference manager, social network. Well, you'll hear about it, so I won't try to summarize it. Because today we have Jan Reichelt here, one of the founders of Mendeley, to inform us about this offer to all at DTU. All at DTU, by signing up, and we'll get to that at the end, may receive a favorable premium membership with some more space and so on than the normal free membership. That already is the case for many at DTU, but let's hear about it, and then we can return to how we get the particular advantages.
Okay,
so
great.
Welcome.
Yes, thank you. Let's see if this works. Yeah, should be, no? Okay, good. So, well, thanks for coming. I think today I'm going to talk to you about two things. One is just the product in general, how it works, and just the real benefits that you ideally get from it as an end user. And the other piece to it is kind of the bigger story behind it, because I would say about 6 years ago I was kind of in your shoes. So I was a PhD student, a researcher, and when I tried to organize my PDF documents, I really had a big problem, because I get all these PDF documents from search engines or academic databases, and then how to organize those, right? How to make sense of those, how to understand what is in those PDF documents, how to work with colleagues if you work on a project together with friends or colleagues at university. So I was in your shoes, and at that time there was nothing really that would help me. So there were, let's say, I would call them maybe legacy tools like RefWorks or EndNote, but they were either very expensive, my university wouldn't subscribe to them, or they were not in the way that I would imagine, or we as founders would imagine this world should work. Because if you look at the other industries, so to say, Facebook and Twitter, like the consumer industries, there you have like fantastic tools, right? They enable you to be more efficient, enable you to share information with your friends. They really give you kind of this new spirit. And I felt like in our industry it was all very, very boring and very inaccessible. And so yesterday I gave a quick talk about a topic. They asked me to speak here in Denmark about the topic, how do scientists become more social, which is actually the broader issue behind what Mendeley now is in terms of reference management. And the funny thing is, I actually believe we don't need to make us more social, because we are already social, right? We sit here, we go to conferences, we work together, we do study groups. So it's not a question of making us more social, or how do we become more social, but it's a lack of tools that allow us to be more social. There's no technological infrastructure. And so, for example, that was one of the bits and pieces that I was missing when I was using other tools like EndNote or whatever you name it. That those tools would not allow us to be really efficient in terms of productivity, but also collaboration and this whole social aspect that was going on in other industries. So the way we got started is this was us as PhD students in the labs. And actually we already had that problem as master thesis students, because when you write your master thesis you ideally already use a lot of references. And then we had all these PDF documents that I, back then, had organized in some sort of folder structure. So I built a folder structure on my computer, and I had a 4-digit ID assigned to each PDF. And then I had an Excel table where I would have the 4-digit ID, which I had put in the file name, and then I had basically the title and my notes in an Excel table. So I would then be able to search the Excel table, and if I wanted to find the associated PDF document, I would search for the 4-digit number in the file name via Windows Explorer. Incredibly painful, but I wasn't prepared to pay, let's say, 100 euros for a software license where I knew it wouldn't really satisfy my needs. So we built a tool where you could then drag and drop all those PDF documents into that tool. It's called Mendeley Desktop. And the other thing about it, it works on all platforms. So it's Windows, Mac, Linux. We have a mobile app, iOS. Android is under development. we have a web app, so you drag and drop the PDF documents in there, and what we then try to develop is algorithms that would be able to extract the data from those PDF documents in order to set up your library automatically. Because one of the pain points I had back then is when I was setting up this, let's say, Excel table, I would need to copy the title from the PDF document, or either type it in by hand and then put it in that Excel table. And I feel like it doesn't make sense, because researchers are putting so much effort into creating manuscripts and then sending it to the publisher presses it into a PDF, sends it back to the researcher, and all that structured information is lost. Doesn't make sense, right? And we have all these technologies, so why don't we use them? So what we build is we build algorithms that would try to extract as much information from that PDF, and that works in the sense of, you look at the first page and you try to identify the first 4-digit number that starts with a 19 or 20, and that's most likely the year of publication, right? Or the let's say sentence that has the biggest formatting is most likely the title, and so forth. So we were trying to then extract all this information and help you to build up your library automatically, so that you don't actually need to type in anymore, ideally. And I'm going to demonstrate how that works as well in a second. Then we have a PDF viewer in the application. So you have in that PDF viewer, you can make highlights and annotations. And the idea behind that is, what happened to me back then is, because there was no PDF viewer in the application, I printed out the PDF document, then I made notes in my office, and then I went home and I said, oh, actually I wanted to continue to work on that, but damn, I forgot the paper in my office, right? It doesn't make sense. So we have all this stuff digital now. You can sync it against your web account, and then you have, let's say, your Windows computer in the office, have it all kind of worked out in the office. Then you go back home. Back home you have your iPad, and then on the iPad you can download all your stuff, because you have like your central copy in the web, and then you have all your annotations and highlights at home on your iPad or your Mac or whatever, right? So that's the idea. And then besides the productivity aspect, then we said, okay, well, now we actually, it's not only me in our department at the university, but there are actually 5 people, and we write a paper together. So I needed to share those papers with my colleagues and friends. And how did we do this? We sent emails, right? And then you send an email and say, you should read this, and then you add another person to the email thread, and then it's a mess, right? It's really a mess. You kind of try to keep track of what's going on, then Outlook crashes, and it's all a big mess. So we said, why don't we allow for collaboration functionality in Mendeley, where you can create groups, you drag and drop the papers in that group, the highlights and annotations within the documents become get a different color based on the person who works with you on that document, and you have a kind of Facebook newsfeed style, let's say, what's new pane, where you can see what's going on in your groups, who does comments, who has added a document to one of your groups. Again, these technologies are already there in other industries. Why can't we make them use for our industry? And then I would say the third step, beside productivity, collaboration, was then the kind of conceptual kicker, which we stumbled across somehow, and whilst we were developing Mendeley. And that is basically that we then said, okay, well, now let's imagine we have 2 million researchers using Mendeley, which in fact we have by now. What if we then could aggregate anonymously everything, all the activity that's going on in those individual libraries? Again, anonymously, for this, because of obviously we want to safeguard privacy of the individual researcher, so we can never disclose what you as an individual have in your library. But we could say, well, there is a computer science student from Denmark, a PhD student in computer science from Denmark, reading these and these papers, right? And you could show those statistics, because then you could look at an article and say, what is the social context for that individual article? And we could then tell other PhD students in computer science from Denmark or from other parts of the world, hey, maybe you should take a look at that article, because your peers or similar people are looking at that stuff. So when I started my PhD research, it's massively painful. You start working yourself into a new topic and you don't know where to start, and you don't know who else is working on that. And so the idea behind that is as well making it more visible, pushing transparency, pushing openness for science by actually plugging into the actual workflow of the researcher. So this is a screenshot, and I'm going to do the second half, actual real product demonstration, how it works, the different features, but this gives you a view of how the product works. You know, you have a list of references where you have a PDF attached. You can do a full text search across your whole database, including the annotations and notes within the PDF viewer. And we have a very nice little plugin for Word, where in a Word you can write your manuscript, and if you want to cite a paper reference from your database, you just put in, you know, insert citation, and in the end you click a button, and this thing here, this reference list, is being generated automatically. I will demonstrate that. And then if you look into the aggregated data, the fantastic thing that you can do then is, you know, take, let's say, a discipline, but you can take any keyword or any tag. You could then say, okay, let's now look into the Mendeley database and see what is going on in the discipline of biological sciences. And you could see these are popular groups, public groups that people have set up. The private groups you won't see because they're private, but you can see what are popular groups. You can see the papers in those groups. You can see who else is in those groups, what is their profile, which other groups are they part of. You can see popular papers based on, let's say, readership, and then the profile of those readers, popular tags, and active members. And what that means effectively is what we are doing, we're driving a huge social discovery engine that previously was not there. So previously you had pure search, right? You go to a search box, you type in your search query, or you have, let's say, maximum some sort of recommendation algorithm that would help you, or email alert that would help you to discover new stuff. This is a whole new way of discovering information and research papers in that particular case based on social context, which in fact has always been there, but there was no infrastructure to actually make that useful. Talking about recommendation engine, Mendeley has a feature which we call Mendeley Suggest / related research, where if you build your personal library, we can deliver to you in real time additional recommendations for research papers. So what we technically do is we look into your library and we say, let's say you have 100 articles, and we cross-compare those 100 articles, not revealing your identity, cross-compare those 100 articles with the 2 million other libraries that we have, or the other users, and say, well, if there's a significantly large overlap, we will recommend to each other the non-overlapping parts, right? Because it makes sense that, you know, if there's 80% overlap, that you might be interested in the 20% non-overlapping pieces of the other researcher. And so we can, again, drive, based on social information, valuable content to you as a researcher. And this gives you is a quick view again about this news feed in the groups, where you can then see people are commenting, and you can keep up to date about what's going on. That has brought us quite far, up to the point that I'm able to stand here and tell you, what Mendeley does. And this is a quick capture of some of the tweets over a couple of months. And the fantastic thing is there are people like, this is my favorite here, that say, Mendeley is the bomb for academic gangsters looking to blow it up all raw-like. Or, I love Mendeley, it brings the fun back to science. So I have to say, I think we got to the point, you would call that in startup terms, product market fit. And now where I'm standing here is growth and traction, right? So we obviously want to achieve more growth and more traction. That is also why later on, maybe Max will tell you a little bit more about a premium offering that we are doing jointly with DTU, where you all get free access to a premium account, including Mendeley Suggest, more online storage, more collaboration, and you all get that sponsored by Elsevier, Mendeley, and DTU. We have quite an impressive user base. Again, 5-6 years ago, I would never have imagined we get there that quickly, but the list of users and institutions is quite impressive. And then we have people on the ground who actually then said, well, what you do really has changed the workflow, and you add so much value to what I do. And by the way, I also like the fact that you're trying to push for openness and transparency, that those guys have said, I want to become a Mendeley advisor, representing Mendeley on my campus. And what they do is they do effectively what I do now. They explain, what is behind it, how does it work, they give workshops. But for us, they're very important because they provide very detailed feedback, right? Which direction should we continue to develop the product? What has been the feedback? What have, the people who attended the workshops not been happy with, for example, right? So we have that as well, and those guys are there. I mean, we don't pay any money for that. It's just really a fantastic communication tool for us, and it keeps us really on the ground because we want to make sure that Mendeley stays and remains the best tool out there. So coming back to the social piece, and so this is kind of before we tap into the actual productivity and actual usage of the tool, something that I want to give you on your way because you are the new generation of researchers. And a view that I feel like the industry and the academic community generally is kind of missing out on. So we have all this big, massive content out there, all the research papers, all the stuff you're, I mean, probably struggling with, filtering, sorting, making sense of, and so forth. This stuff is being produced and pushed out by the publishers, and they do a pretty good job at that. Then we have a smaller sliver of information on top of that, which you might call metadata. So what that effectively means is there are systems and service providers that go into those documents and try to establish automated links and keyword analysis between those documents, right? So that you can do semantic interlinking based on concepts and papers and so forth. Either sometimes the publishers do themselves this stuff, or it's being done by other companies. But there's one piece that I feel like, again, the industry has completely missed out on, and other industries have done a good job, is the social layer, right? Which is kind of the piece of communication. You sitting here upstairs, you're doing your stuff together, maybe traveling to a conference, being in a lab together, writing a paper together, and so forth. And there's, until recently, hasn't been a big, strong infrastructure to actually make that work. And if you look at the other industries, newspaper industry, music industry, those guys never really understood it well, and that is why all of them, as pure content providers, are massively struggling with business models and how to monetize content, because what happens if tomorrow this social layer becomes the actual driving force of how people engage and discover content in the academic industry? So I think what we do here with Mendeley is just actually kind of opening the Pandora's box of the future of the academic industry in the next 5 to 10 years. And so this is my view of the importance of, well, Mendeley is one tool, right? But it's a broader mindset of, I think, us as scientists needing to push for openness and not be that secretive, and trying to use those tools and educate each other about it. And then the traditional way of how people in research are being evaluated is, or has largely been, the impact factor for journals. However, the problem with this thing about the impact factor of journals is that the impact factor is really not the best way to measure the quality of an article, because it takes time to emerge based on citations, it's based on the journal and not on the article. So in fact, it would be much better to focus on the citations, views, or downloads of an individual article. So again, it would be much better to look at the social context of an individual article rather than to take a big impact factor that is based on the overall journal. So if you then say, okay, if we want to look at the individual article, how can we evaluate the individual article, and how much work would that be to evaluate all the individual articles that are out there? So this tells you how many articles are out there. Many. And the reason why I show that to you is the dimension of this social sliver, right, which initially was quite small but might turn into something big. So this graph shows you the amount of papers and documents that Mendeley users are using in their individual libraries. And it's massive. So we currently track 500 million articles. That is a non-deduplicated figure. Deduplicated, that would be around 100 million, but I think that number is still sufficiently big. And I would expect a system like Mendeley at some point, that we see a saturating curve, so we can actually say, that is the limit, or that is the size of our universe. But the importance of getting our head around the social aspect and managing information in our area is just massive. In Mendeley's case, the nice thing about it, we not only have information about the documents, but we also have information about the user profile. As I mentioned, computer science student, or PhD computer science student in Denmark. We have the user-generated tags and nodes that you might apply to your documents. We have the recommendation engine, and it's all in real time based on the article, because as soon as somebody interacts with an article, the Mendeley system knows about it, and we can, drive recommendations, for example, based on that. We're a small team. We can't make that accessible. We can't make. We can't extract all the value from that. So we've developed an API. Other people can access that data. They can just, extract that data from Mendeley's database. And what we've seen is now people have started to develop applications on top of what we've built. So we have 300 third-party applications. We have some people trying to do an Android app. We have altmetrics information, which is basically a new stream where people try to combine different pieces of information to evaluate an individual article. I won't go too much into detail about that. That was more the topic of the talk yesterday. So I'm going to skip this. This one basically shows you that there's a strong correlation between Mendeley readership information and the impact factor, meaning that Mendeley readership is, in my view, a quite important factor for the future. But again, I won't bore you with that. That's all the scientific stuff. This as well. So I think the vision why we've built Mendeley really, and I'm saying this because you should not forget when you're using Mendeley that there's more to it than just being a reference manager. Tim Berners-Lee, the kind of father of the World Wide Web, had a famous talk where he said, all the time we're very conscious of the huge challenges that human society has now. Curing cancer, understanding the brain for Alzheimer's, all these really important challenges that we as scientists are working on. But a lot of the state of knowledge of the human race is sitting in the scientist's computer, in your individual computers, because your nodes, even no matter what stage you are in, your nodes can be really valuable. It's sitting in the scientist's computers and is currently not shared. We need to get it unlocked so we can tackle those huge problems, right? We need to get the knowledge unlocked. We need to be able to share it. And that is, I think, what the philosophy is now behind Mendeley. Do not forget that when you use it. I'm going to stop here and I'm going to jump right into the nice and hopefully really productive end-user features and how you can get the most out of it, because that's eventually what is the most important thing to us, deliver value. So let me switch to this one here. How many of you are Mendeley users already? Okay. Okay, good. Okay, so I now need to switch around a little bit because I can't see this one here on my screen. So what this shows you, this is basically the main interface of Mendeley Desktop. You have all your references nicely sorted, right? It's very actually the idea behind that is very similar to iTunes. When you organize your documents and when you organize your music files in iTunes. Here on the right-hand side, you have kind of the document details, and if you click on that button here, you have the PDF viewer, where you then can make. Where do I have it? Where you can then make a note, annotation, a note in that case, and that note will also appear here. And then remember, if you drag and drop this thing into a private group and another one comments, those nodes will have different colors. I think that the main structure is that you have your let's say individual private collection. Nobody can see this, and then in this area you can basically create groups where you can then make those groups either private or public. Meaning private groups, you have to invite people individually. Nobody can see this from the outside. And then you have as well a library in here. You have the news feed where people start commenting, and you have a list of members, obviously. And so as part of that premium link upgrade that we offer you here at DTU, the limitations for those groups are much bigger than before. So I think in the free version you can create one group with a maximum of 3 people, and later on we would ask you to pay for that. But as an institutional, let's say, offering, you can, I think it's unlimited groups with up to 25 people, I believe. What you have here on the bottom is once you have your documents in your library, Mendeley creates quick filters automatically. So you can say, okay, I want to just see all the publications that I have done in chemical physics letters, and it would narrow it down automatically. Those filters are being created automatically. You don't have to set them up. They exist just because the system knows that this is the journal chemical physics letters. You can also then just search full text in real time as you type, including title, notes. You know, say you have made a note in within one of the PDF documents, those notes are indexed as well, and you can search those notes as well at the same time. So let's switch quickly to a workflow. Just need to move my windows to this one here. So I'm not sure, how many of you are using Science Direct as a search engine for academic papers? A few. How do you, when you search for documents and references and papers, what do you use? Google Scholar, Find It at DTU? How many use Google Scholar? How many use the DTU Find It system? A few as well. Science Direct, not some. I would say the idea is the same. You can use Google Scholar, you can use the Find It system. Now I'm just going to use Science Direct, but it doesn't matter. So what you would need to do is you would need to go to mendeley.com/import, and then you have your bookmarks bar in any browser. Now I'm using Chrome, but it's the same for Windows Explorer, Safari, Internet Explorer. And you would drag and drop this thing here to your bookmarks bar, right? You would add it here. I've done this already, so I have the Save to Mendeley button already on my bookmarks bar. And basically you can see all the databases that we are supporting, right? So it's not a complete list, but it includes most of them. So for example, you can see Google Scholar is here, Science Direct is here, and so forth. So we support those sites, and let's say we go to Science Direct, and then we search for a keyword, then you get a search results list, and then I just, as an example, go to the first document. So now let's assume I know that this is the document I want to import into Mendeley. And again, the process is the same whether you use Google Scholar or Find It. You then just simply say Save to Mendeley. What happens? The Mendeley web importer pops up, translates that search result into Mendeley readable format. You can say download PDF if the institution has a subscription to the full text, which more likely happens if you search within Science Direct than Google Scholar, I believe. You can then click Save. And then you open Mendeley Desktop. You can sync it, and then let's just quickly see what was the title, transplantation. You could also search just, where do we have it recently added?
I think it said it was already there.
It was already there? Yeah. Then let's choose another one. Let's choose the second one. It's also an exciting title. So we click Save to Mendeley. So ZPF819, I save it to Mendeley. Switch to Mendeley. I do a sync to retrieve the information, and then you can see in recently added, the information is there, right? Now here in this case, for some reason it did not catch the PDF document. So let's try another one. Save to Mendeley. So probably there's no subscription to that particular journal, Stem Cell Research. So you sometimes have, when you have, for example, this one here, you have this button, download and or open, and then you click on that one, it retrieves it in the background, and then you can still read it, right? So it depends a little bit on the institutional subscription that you have.
Can I ask a question?
Of course.
So, the way I usually do it is I just save the PDF to a folder that's synced, so it automatically syncs with that folder. That's the same, right?
Yes. So the other way to do this is that in Mendeley Desktop, you can say preferences, and you have watched, we call that watched folders. So you can highlight one folder, let's say, which you consider your inbox folder on your hard disk, where you always drop all the PDF documents that you receive, maybe also via email from colleagues. And if you then activate that, let's say I would have, let's say desktop, I would watch desktop. Every time you drag and drop a PDF document into that folder, Mendeley will then automatically put that into, import that into Mendeley. The challenge with that sometimes is that the extraction of the metadata is not as clean as if you import it straight away from the database. Because from the database we take the information that the database sends. In that case we try to extract the information from the PDF document, and that's sometimes more dirty than not. But it's another way of importing information. Yes. You can also, if you use, let's say, RefWorks or EndNote, you can in RefWorks or EndNote just export your information via RIS or XML. So you go to EndNote, export your references via XML, and then you can say here, for example, add files. And then here, you could import via RIS or via XML from EndNote or Zotero, depending on what tool you use. Okay, let's try one other thing. So let's go. Yeah. Yes, you should be able to do that as well. So let's do this here. So let's search. You have a search results list. Save to Mendeley. What it will do is it will typically translate the whole page of search results into Mendeley readable format. Here you can see, here you have the PDF attached, here you don't. And then you click add. If you say edit, you can then select where you want to add it to straight away. Or you can, so I add it to just all documents, you can straight away enter a keyword or a tag to that document, then you click update. And then you say, show me, sort this by my tags, stem cell, because I've just added that stem cell, and there you have the document. So ideally, I would say that should be the preferred way of doing things, because there's very little data loss. If you import a PDF document from your hard drive, then the extraction algorithm is obviously not 100% accurate. And by the way, here, let's say, you can then download the PDF, because if you had seen that in the you maybe remember that this one here was, I think, showed the PDF document, right? So now I've, with a click of a button, retrieved the full text PDF via kind of the linking through in the background. Excuse me? Where does it physically put the PDF? So it puts the PDF physically where you want it to be put. So again, there's some nice, quite a cool tool, which is called File Organizer, where you can set a folder structure system. So you can say, okay, I want Mendeley to organize my files, copied into a folder that you determine as the main folder, and sorted as well into subfolders that I have determined based on, use the year as the separating subfolder, and also rename all the files based on author, year, title. So if I then go, let's say, Documents, Mendeley Desktop, let's just go to that folder to show you how it looks like. So desktop, what was documents? Jan Reichelt, documents, Mendeley desktop, and here you can see it has sorted it all by year automatically, and so this one here is year 1981. So I go 1981, and here I have the document, which by the way also is renamed, because when you download documents from a search engine, sometimes they just have like cryptic file names, right? XCD some number, right? And it's not very helpful if you then want to find that document again, or if you want to send it to a colleague. If you activate the file organizer in Mendeley, it will do this stuff for you automatically. So for example, you could also then just, let's say, copy the root folder and copy it on an external hard drive if you wanted to have a backup, for example. Yeah, that's the naming feature. So I could say, you know, I also wanted to have it sorted with the journal in that field. I can then drag and drop. These 4 fields are kind of the items by which you can like structure it. So we have file organizer, watch folders. I mean, I'm not sure how many of you use BibTeX, but we have a synchronization with BibTeX as well, so that the BibTeX file is always kept up to date based on the information of your library. We have an integration with Zotero, so should you wish to use Zotero at the same time, you can do the Zotero integration, which means that every time you use Zotero, everything that you do with the Zotero will also be in Mendeley. So you can use Mendeley as the underlying database and still keep on using Zotero if you like some of their features better. So let's then, I can see it. So let's then try and create a new group, right? So we say DTU test group. I can then add a description. And then I can select private, invite only, or open. Private means nobody will be able to see that group, search for it, or join your group without you, let's say, owning, or without you making that decision. So if you set that group to private, you can't search it from the outside. Well, it will be completely closed, and you need to explicitly invite your coworkers, right? So it's private. In the standard, let's say free version, it would be up to 2 people that you could invite, so maximum 3 people. But now with this pilot that we're running with DTU, that's up to 25. Invite only. So, and by the way, in private you can also share PDF documents because it's a very limited environment. Invite only is a group that is publicly visible, but nobody can join, right? So people can only follow it and can say, okay, maybe you want to do a reference list for your project, and you don't have a problem with sharing that information because, you know, ideally, why would you? Maybe it actually helps to contribute to build your profile as a researcher, but you don't want other people to just join that group and add documents and maybe delete documents and mess around. So that would be invite only. Or you make it completely open, which is you're the group owner, but other people could just join, they can add references, and you can make it really open and collaborative, and we have a few of those groups as well. So now let's say I create a private group, and then either you use people who are already contacts in Mendeley, or you invite them by email. So I invite myself, and you can add text here, and then send invites. Once I'm in that group, what I would do is obviously, so you can see it has this little save icon, which means it's a private group. So again, it's not visible from the outside. Now I'm in here, created by me, and then I can go and say, okay, all documents, let's use this one here, and I add it here. So now in documents, edit the copy, so we can delete one. So in that group now I have this document, and actually if I'm here and I go back, it should also, maybe there's a little delay, but it should now show in the newsfeed eventually as well that I've added that document to that group. So if other people are member of that group, they can always follow in the group newsfeed or on their central newsfeed that I've made a change, I've added a document. The way how that looks like is basically then on a more aggregated level like this. So I have quite a few contacts, and then I can see, people added documents to specific groups, people have new connections, there are comments, and so forth. So that's how it looks like once you've populated a little bit your profile. So we have the import stuff. If you want to get a little bit more information about all the different features that Mendeley offers, you could, for example, go to www.resources.mendeley.com, and here we have quite an extensive information base, resource base, where you can then say, okay, I want to get more information about how to use Mendeley Desktop, and then you can say adding all the different ways to add documents, how can I import new content. Writing and citing is actually a nice other feature, where in Word, so let's go to Word, just need to get this over here again. So say you write your paper, right, at the end, or your master thesis, or a research paper. So then you would just write something, and then you would say, as these authors have shown, and then you would make a citation, right? And so if you have the Word plugin installed, which you would automatically if you install Mendeley Desktop, then you have Mendeley. Let's say I can either do it here, or I can just say show Mendeley toolbar. Where is it? Oh, it's in here. So let me move this over. So I have it here. So I could then say insert citation. It would move me back to it would have this pop up here. And then let's say I could search for an author. So I want to cite this guy. So it searches again in real time. Or I could say, well, there was one paper that was dealing with information management or something like that. So I want to insert that citation. If I can't find it here via the search box, I can also just switch to Mendeley Desktop and search it there, because maybe you want to search it by tag or whatever way you want to retrieve the information. But I found it now, so I want to edit. And then it adds the citation here, based on the citation style that you've chosen. I come back to that in a second. So let's do this a second time. For another, let's choose this one. Oh, it's actually me. So let's say you write your paper like that, right? And over time you add more and more citations. Then in the end, at the end of each paper, you would usually have a section called references or bibliography, right? And what you can then do is very simply just say insert bibliography, tuck, and it's there. And here you can then choose the citation style, and based on the citation style, it updates the references automatically. Because depending on which journal you want to submit it to, or which citation style your professor requests you to use, you can just update that. Now, you might think, actually, this is kind of 10 citation styles that, then they update, Mendeley updates this one here, as well as the one here. You might think, well, it's actually not that much, but if you go here, in Mendeley, choose citation style, you can install, so you have a predefined set of citation styles that are pre-installed with Mendeley Desktop. But if you say you want to get more styles, it's probably like 3,000 different styles, which is one of the many interesting things in our industry. But let's say you want to use an additional citation style, and you can see this little thing here. It's like there's so many different citation styles, so you can then search by the citation style that is being requested either by your professor or maybe by the journal that you want to submit to, and then you can just install that citation style and use it in Mendeley Desktop. And so whenever you, for example, if I now, let's say I spotted a mistake and actually this guy is called, spelled just with one L, I would make that change only once in my Mendeley database, and I would then just refresh this, and everywhere else follows, right? That's also the nice thing about the groups. If you work in groups with other people, and you make a change and you want to cite from the same database, it's always up to date. It's always consistent information. So it all depends on your Mendeley desktop library, and you only make a change once, and it works with all the different things that you want to use the information with. So the question was whether there's a similar plugin to LibreOffice. OpenOffice, I think we had an OpenOffice plugin. On LibreOffice, I actually think we still have that. I'm not sure how much we support it at the moment, to be honest. But yes, I think we should have a plugin that should work. That's what I know at the moment. We have had a few requests also for Pages for Apple, and we don't have that. But Word and LibreOffice, yes. And then we're looking into also Google Docs, whether we can support Google Docs, because many people are using Google Docs for collaborative writing as well. So going back to that thing here, how sync works. So it's basically gives you all the information that you need. If you still don't find what you want to find, then we have a pretty extensive support portal where you can actually say, let's say LibreOffice. So there will be some questions and answers around LibreOffice and how to use this and where the plugin is, and so this is a pretty extensive knowledge base, which is a bit more interactive, right? The other one was guides in order to help you get the most out of Mendeley, and this is kind of where you can submit a support request and you will get in touch with our support team if something doesn't work, for example. Let me see. I think I've shown you. So here you have a couple of predefined folders. Simple stuff. You can star documents. One other thing is very interesting. So let's say I have a couple of documents, or let's say I go to this document, right? And this is something I really find interesting. Now, based on that document, I want Mendeley to give me recommendations. What are other relevant documents that I should be reading? So you can then highlight that document and click on Related, and it will pull, related information. Depending on how much information we have, it drives a recommendation engine. You can then also say, well, actually I have a set of documents. So let's say I want to highlight all the documents, or let's say, so let's say 4, and then based on these 4, I want to have recommendations. Obviously now we can give you more recommendations because you gave the system more information in terms of input. And then you can go here, and then you can even find out more. You can go to the article page. You can see, well, this is not that much red, but it's from a PhD student in computer science, and then you can just say simply save reference to library. The web interface in general is, I would say, currently not 100% where I would like to have it, but in Q1 we are starting a huge effort to make this much better. You have your dashboard here, come on, which is your kind of newsfeed type information dashboard where you can see what's going on. You have your library, which resembles or should resemble kind of this thing here, but on the web. I'm not sure why it takes so long. Anyway, let's load it. I don't know why it takes so long, but what you should find here is kind of a web library that should work very similar to your desktop library. The feature set is not as complete as on Mendeley Desktop, but that will change over the next 6 months.
Regarding the recommend function or related function, is it possible to automatically create a folder with all the references you have in a specific paper, for instance?
So something like a smart playlist in iTunes. Okay. So where you say you
Say I have 20 references in a Word document. Can I export those back into a subfolder
Well, what the only way to do this is so you can only create, let's say, a collection here, right? So create a folder. So you say my dissertation. So this is in your private library. No, but I mean this is not being shared with anybody. And then you go to all documents, and then you select those documents and drag and drop them over. You cannot, so let's say, reverse import. So let's say with EndNote you wrote your paper, and then you have your citations in the Word document created via EndNote, and then reverse import that into Mendeley. That doesn't work.
But even if you have them in your library, you can't do.
If you have them here in your library, you can just, select them and then copy them into your folder My Dissertation. And then every time you are in a Word document and you want to cite something, you can then say insert citation and then select from, there should be My Dissertation somewhere. Or you go to Mendeley and then select it from there, right? So there are various ways. I don't know why this is not working, to be honest. So the other things, so you can also browse a huge catalog, but I've yesterday learned that find it at your institution is actually pretty encompassing in terms of information resource, or if you use Google Scholar. But you could, if you liked, if you wanted to, you could also say, you use Mendeley's catalog, and then depending on, let's use this one here, just to take a look at that. And then you get to the article page. Here you have a 2-page PDF preview depending on whether the publisher allows us to do this or not. You have readership statistics about it, you find related papers, and you can also just save the document or reference depending on access rights to a library. I don't know why my library here doesn't work. On the groups part, you will be able to see maybe you will be able to see. Anyway, what is intended, what you should see is popular groups. So you can discover, topic groups around a specific topic. And you can see, what other groups people have created, who else is a member there. Maybe you want to make contact with one of these researchers. So here, for example, so you say the Mendeley Advisor Group, for example, a Mendeley group. There's actually one really funny thing. Or let's say, for example, Dark Side of Research. You go in there, and you will see, there are 39 papers and 364 members. And again, it helps you to discover more content if you like. I think that's all I wanted to show you for now. So the question is regarding the citation styles, whether it's possible to modify these citation styles and basically create your own customized one. Yes, and so, by the way, here you have then the group, and there again you can see the group news feed and all the stuff that's going on there. So in terms of citation styles, yes, you can do that as well. So let's say, where are we? I'm a bit lost now. Oops. Just trying to find my word. So that is, so if you then go choose citation style, it actually starts Mendeley desktop. So then you can go get about, and you can edit styles or create new styles using the citation style language editor. So you go there, then you go to a citation style editor, and there you can find an existing style and modify it or create one completely from scratch. I would say that's a bit more techy because you need to understand the language behind it. We've tried to make it easy, kind of a visual editor, but it's still, I mean, usually there should be so many styles that ideally you wouldn't need to create your own one, but if you wish, you can do that. Yes. So the question is, when you create a group and you invite non-DTU members to that group, whether they have to pay. No, they don't have to pay because DTU provides that.
Two questions, one more concrete. So when I try to put my publications into all of my publications, then the question popping up whether I have the permission to put that in.
Yes. It's actually a good point that you asked this, because there's one functionality that I haven't shown you yet, which is the functionality of my publications in Mendeley Desktop. So let's get Mendeley Desktop over here again. So let's say you have a list of all documents, and sometimes, as you might be one of those cases, you have already written a paper, you've authored and submitted and published a paper somewhere with journals, or maybe even your master thesis, and you want to kind of show that on your profile. So where do we have my publications? So there's one folder that's called My Publications, where you can drag and drop, and you will see I'm an author on all those documents. So I have authored or co-authored these publications, and so I drag and drop them into the folder My Publications. What that means is, on Mendeley, each of you can create a profile. You don't have to, but you can create a public profile. I'm just trying to get there. It just seems like there's something wrong with maybe our server, because like the loading time is so slow. So you create your own profile, and what that means is the documents that you've dragged and dropped into the My Publications folder will automatically appear on your profile. And now the question is, when you drag and drop your publications in the My Publications folders, Mendeley will ask you whether you as the author have the right to share that document publicly with everybody. The problem with that is that in many cases publishers retain the right to or have the copyright over the document that you have submitted. So you might not be allowed to make publicly available the final published version, but let's say an author manuscript. So the manuscript that you basically have submitted to the publisher. So you cannot share the published version, but you can share the manuscript that you have before the publication process. And so there are so many different publisher policies. We can never find out about that in detail, so that's where we rely on you as the researcher to say, well, you know, I've checked with my publisher whether I can actually share the full document or whether I can only share the manuscript, for example, right? And you need to sort that out with your publisher. Yes, we had those cases where publishers actually enforce their copyright. Generally, they are relatively relaxed. In particular about the author manuscripts, it's not that big of a problem. When it comes to the, let's say, published journal articles, it's a different case, because this is kind of the business model of the publishers, that they provide that content, you know, paid for back to the institutions. And so let's assume all of that content was available for free on a platform like Mendeley. You know, that would potentially harm the business model of a publisher. So that's why there are discussions going on to become more liberal as well, but that's something that is up to you as the author to negotiate with your publisher. So the way that looks like is here you see I have my publications, and they are all based on what I have put in here in my publications folder. So if you want to create your own if you want to create your own profile, then you can do that, and it works automatically, and then you can you know, discover which groups I'm a member of and so forth. But in general, it's not a, let's say, required feature. You know, you can use this, but you don't have to. Let's say you have a profile at an institution already somewhere else. You can also just take this bit here, this my publication bit, and use it like an embed code, like a YouTube video, and take just this bit and embed it somewhere else. Similar is true for this group here. You don't have to do this in Mendeley. Let's say you write a blog. You can also just take this and embed it somewhere else. So we allow this, you know, sharing and re-sharing of you know, stuff that's happening on Mendeley. Yeah, of course, yeah.
Speaking about socializing research, how do you compare Mendeley with ResearchGate in terms of your objectives in terms of the service?
Okay, so the question is, how do we compare Mendeley with ResearchGate, for example? So, I mean, I don't have clear visibility about the objectives of ResearchGate at the moment. I would say our focus is very much on really supporting end users and researchers, from bachelor students to senior researchers, in their workflow, in productivity, you know, organizing their stuff and using that as a hook to make people more social, right? So for me, social is not just, yeah, we create a social network for scientists, right? To me, social is how can we support collaboration, because that is what is already going on. How can we create these public groups? How can we support that? And for me, social in science is always also around the document. So, you know, if you look at the tags, you know, these are the tags that are part of that group, that are part of the document. So it's about the social context around the people and around the papers. So it's not that, I wouldn't say Mendeley is a typical social network for scientists. It's not a Facebook for scientists. It really roots in productivity, in solving an immediate problem, and I believe ResearchGate doesn't do that. So that's where I see the main difference. Yeah, of course.
Is it possible to print PDFs directly from Mendeley? Because I haven't found out. And also, can you add your notes or highlights to that print?
Yeah, so question is, can you print PDFs from within Mendeley? And secondly, can you add your notes and highlights? First answer is no, you can't. Because ideally, we would not want people to print out stuff, right? We would help people to keep it digital for many reasons. But in fact, it is one of the most requested features. If you go to a, we actually have a funny but actually valuable forum feedback where you can see, for example, what are the most requested features by people, right? And some of them should be, there should also be something like print PDF documents. So we will, I think, implement that over the next year, but currently it's not possible. What you can do though is, if you go into a document that has a note, so let's take a look at that. Let's see if we have a note in here. No, we don't, but so let's create one. Let's make a highlight and create a note. So, tuck. Create a note. So as you see, you know, there's a note, there's a highlight, and I don't like this. And then you can say export PDF with annotations. So you then click export article content and the notes. This article has 1 notes. You export that, and you have a fresh PDF, which is not the one that is in your folder structure, that you can then save somewhere else, and then again can send it around. But then if somebody else re-imports that, I don't think we'll catch that. What you should then do is you should share it via Mendeley. I mean, that's the whole purpose of the thing. Sorry, I don't understand that. Yeah. So the only thing I understood is what about non-scientific publications, right? So what you can do in Mendeley, so I mean, you can see it's very much geared towards PDF documents because that is the biggest source of problems and pain for researcher in my view. Still, what you can still do is you can just say, you can also say add entry manually, for example, right? So if you say, there are various ways. Let's say you want to just capture a web page. You can use the web importer as well to just capture a web page. So let's say you're not on one of the recognized sites, databases like Google Scholar or Science Direct, and if you click Save to Mendeley, what it will do is it will save the web page. So it will do a web snapshot, right? So that's one way of, for example, saving HTML sites or, for example, YouTube videos or stuff like that. You can, but you also can add entry manually, and here you can select what type of thing you want to add, right? Say a newspaper article or a patent. I guess we have a patent, yeah. Or it's just a working paper. Or you can also from scratch create a web page. So there are various ways how you can import stuff, but I would say the most seamless flow is, with regards to this PDF download thing. So yes, policy reports. Yes, but yeah. So let's say a policy report of 100 pages. But would that policy report of 100 pages come along as a PDF document? As what document would it come? Sorry? Books. Yeah. So you would then say you create a new entry with a book, right? And then you would have to type it in manually, because I wouldn't know a best way of, unless you have a database where you already have that metadata stored and you can just search for it and then import it and then later on attach the PDF document or the Word document or whatever it is. That would be one way, or you do it all manually. That's the only way to do this. Good, yeah?
I guess my question relates to that, because I have a lot of old PDF files for which the bibliographic information is not imported correctly. Or so there's a lot of manual entries here. That's the only way to do it.
So if you have a lot of old PDFs with manual entries, so do you have, let's say, a database somewhere else in EndNote or somewhere else where, or do you just have this PDF on your hard disk? Yeah, then if you have very old PDF documents which are stored as image PDFs and not text PDFs, then yeah, we thought at some point of implementing an OCR engine, but we don't have that. So what you would need to do is you would just drag and drop all those PDF documents in Mendeley Desktop. We would not extract any information, so basically you would have lots of entries in here that are empty, but where you have the PDF document attached. Then you would open that PDF document, and then on the right-hand side, you would basically type what you can see on the left-hand side. It's not ideal, but it's at least a structured workflow of hopefully, adding that information. Let's say if you can see that the PDF document contains a DOI, right? Let's see, this one here doesn't have a DOI, which is a digital object identifier. So this one here, I guess, should have one. No, also doesn't have one. So sometimes these documents have DOIs, digital object identifiers. What you could do is you could just input the DOI in here by hand and say retrieve. And then based on the DOI, it would retrieve all the metadata from a central database. So that would be one way to do it. You could also, based on PubMed ID or based on archive ID, for example, could do it. But yeah, that's a big problem still, I agree. Okay? If there are more questions, you can also come up to me afterwards. I hope you see there's a lot of functionalities, a lot of features. Might take you a while to get your head around, but I've also pointed you to some of the sources, the resource center, right? How you can get started, resources.mendeley.com, as well as the support forum, if you have a question. And don't forget about the broader picture of embracing those tools. It doesn't necessarily need to be Mendeley only. I hope Mendeley is part of that, but think about this in a broader picture. Yeah. So the question is maybe Max, you're gonna, because Max and Mogens Max and somewhere else, they will run this pilot. And maybe you can give some more information about this upgrade link functionality. No?
Use this one. Hello, my name is Max Dumoulin. Thank you very much. So from now on, you can get the upgrade, which includes more storage space, so 5 gigabytes, and also the option to have 25 people in a group, as well as the Mendeley Suggest functionality. So you have all that. It's available right now. Can I ask, has anyone of you already used it, the upgrade link? Yeah? Okay, so what you need is a DTU email address, right? So you need your email, so your inbox, and you need to know your email address. So what you do is you go to the library site. It's, I think, dtic.dtu.dk/Mendeley. Yes, /Mendeley. Thanks, Jens. So there you will find the link. Go there. Then there are two options. Either you already have a Mendeley account, or you don't. If you have a Mendeley account, you need to know your login details for Mendeley. Okay, you just log in, and then a link will be sent to your. So you also need to fill in your DTU email address. A verification link will be sent to you. You click on it in your inbox. Done. You've got it. All right. So that's all. If you don't have a Mendeley account, the link will allow you to create an account immediately. You will still need the verification in your DTU inbox. Is that sort of clear? Yeah. So you need, if you have a Mendeley account, you need your login for Mendeley. If you don't need that. If you and you definitely need your DTU email address, because that's where the verification will be sent. That's how we sort of check if you're with DTU. Okay, and all the DTU email addresses work. So if you have student.dtu.dk or your research department.dtu.dk, everything works. And we can also see later on, you know, how many of those per department have signed up. So we give some cool overviews to the library so they can see how popular the features are. Okay. Questions about this, about upgrade? No? If there are questions also later on, you can also find me and as well as Jan on Mendeley. Befriend us and ask questions directly. Sorry, yes. Yes, so very good question. Thank you for reminding me. Many of you will have used a Gmail address or whatever instead of a DTU address. You can still keep that, but you need to fill in once at least your DTU address for this verification. So you cannot do the verification on your Gmail address. We need at least once your DTU address, but you can keep all your updates and all that in your private box. Yes, thank you for that question. Very good. Yes. Sorry, I really can't hear you. Yeah. Yeah. Very good question. Yeah, we will not cut your access, at least not for quite some time. Yeah, yeah, you can keep it. Also, this is a pilot for a year, and Maurice made me promise that after the year we won't cut your access, so we won't. So yeah, yeah, promise. Some video. Okay. More questions? No? Okay, who's going to upgrade? Yes. Who's not going to upgrade? Excellent, very good. That's just what I wanted to see. Thank you very much. Thank you all for coming here. Thank you.